Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about in this video SWOT analysis, and in this video we'll talk about it in a little bit more detail than how we talked about it when we talked about the marketing plan. So in this video I hope you will understand what the SWOT analysis is and what are the things that you need to keep in mind when you want to do the SWOT analysis. Well, whenever we talk about SWOT analysis, it is part of the situation analysis. Now, if you've not looked at the marketing plan video that I had posted, then please go to that video and take a look at it, because SWOT analysis is part of the marketing plan, and I want you to know where the SWOT analysis fits in into the broader picture. Now, whenever we're talking about SWOT analysis, since this is a marketing channel, we're going to talk about it in the context of the marketing plan. But the great thing about SWOT analysis is that it is widely used and is applicable in a lot of situations. So whenever you're creating a plan, no matter what it is about, so it could be a plan for your personal goal and your personal ambitions, in that case also doing a SWOT analysis will be very, very helpful. So it's something that you need to keep in mind, and the better you get at doing SWOT analysis, the better results you will get in terms of your planning. And if you work in any companies or in any scenarios or in any capacity, generally you will come across a SWOT analysis. So it's very important that you understand how to do a SWOT analysis and understand like what is the objective of the SWOT analysis. And in the context of planning, the objective of SWOT analysis is to take into account the situation that you are currently in. So if you look at the marketing plan here, you will see that the SWOT analysis is a part of the situation analysis, where you analyze the current situation that you are in. So having an understanding of where you are right now will give you an idea of what are the things that you will need to do to achieve your objectives, right? And that is what marketing plan is all about, or any plan is all about. Once you understand where you are through your situation analysis, you will be able to chart a path forward to achieving your objectives. So in terms of marketing plan, SWOT analysis fits into the situational analysis part, where you are analyzing your situation. And it's a very, very important component of marketing, and as well as very, very important component of any plan that you might create. In this video, I'll give you some examples as well, and I would want you to grab a pen and paper, and after we finish with this video, do a SWOT analysis on yourself. Like, I would recommend you create a marketing plan about yourself as well. So when you're creating a marketing plan about yourself, a big component of that is going to be creating this SWOT analysis, right? So hopefully you will understand how to do the SWOT analysis after listening to this video. So what is the SWOT analysis? It is nothing but just an abbreviation of the terms strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats, right? So when you take all of these words together, it becomes SWOT. So SWOT, SWOT analysis. So let's just briefly go over what these terms mean, and I'll explain it to them later on. And by the end of the video, you should be able to understand what is a strength, what is a weakness, what is an opportunity, and what is a threat. So strength, whenever we talk about strength, it is basically something that you are good at, right? So if you are a company, then the company's strength is something that the company is really, really good at, something that the company does really well. So in terms of me personally, some strengths would be the things that I'm really good at. So hopefully I am good at making you understand what the SWOT analysis is. I think I am good at making you understand what SWOT analysis is. In that case, that is my strength, right? So if you think that I am a cute guy, and that is a positive thing, hopefully, then that would be my strength as well, right? And just as your strength is something that you are good at, weakness is something that you are not good at. So weakness is something that is a negative factor for you. In terms of the company, weakness is something that the company does not do well, right? So if you think about me, myself personally, maybe my English capabilities are not on par with the people who grew up or were born here in the United States. In that case, my speech or my language skills can be considered a weakness, right? Because it is a negative factor that affects my ability to achieve my goals. In terms of companies, the weaknesses are internal factors to the companies that are negative. So something that the company does not know how to do well. So if you are a car manufacturer and you cannot build quality cars, let's say, in that case, that's a weakness, right? It's a negative factor that affects the company. If you have really bad employees, let's say, then in that case, that is a negative factor and will be considered a weakness. So strength, something that the company is really good at. Weaknesses, something that the company does not do so well. Let's talk a little bit about opportunities. Opportunities are external environmental factor that positively impacts a company, right? Let's say that the economy is soaring, right? Economy is soaring, everybody has a job, people are making more money than they were making in the past. Now, those are all external environmental factors that will impact most businesses positively because when consumers have more money, they will spend more money, which is good for business, right? So, it is an external environmental factor that positively affects a company, so it's a opportunity. Consequently, or conversely, when we talk about threats, it's external environmental factor that impacts the company negatively. So taking the example of economics again, let's say that the economy is going down and we are headed for a recession. And so if we're headed for a recession, in that case, what is going to happen is that people will have less and less money to spend, right? Because many people might lose their jobs, many people might have their salary reduced, right? And many people might in general be fearful of what the future holds, so they will stop spending unnecessary money, right? So they will only try to spend money on things that they think are very, very necessary, which is not a good thing for a company that is trying to sell the consumers their goods, right? So this is an external environmental factor that affects the company negatively, which is then a threat that the company must face. So whenever we look at any factor that impacts a company, it can be either a strength or a weakness or an opportunity or a threat. So how do we correctly classify that particular factor as being a strength or a weakness or an opportunity or a threat? And that's what this video is going to hopefully teach you, right? So whenever we're talking about the SWOT analysis, so we want to classify the SWOTs correctly. This is where all the relevant stakeholders will get together and brainstorm to figure out what the strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats are that are facing the company that will either positively affect or negatively affect the company's ability to achieve its objectives. Now, if you're doing a SWOT analysis for yourself as a person, then also you need to get down and brainstorm what are the things that you are good at, what are the things that are positive about you, what are the things that are negative about you. You can do a lot of marketing research and ask other people as well to do a comprehensive SWOT analysis about yourself. So in this particular slide, we're going to talk about how do you classify SWOT correctly, right? So the one thing, there are a few steps that you can take that will help you to classify the factors for the SWOT analysis correctly. The first thing you need to figure out is whether or not it's an internal factor or an external factor. So how do you differentiate between an internal factor and an external factor? So an external factor is a factor that is external from you or external from the company that the company does not control. And It is something that impacts not only you, but it will impact your competitors as well. So let's take an example again of the economy, right? So the economy goes through a recession. In that case, does the company control the economy? No, no one single company controls the economy. So it is an external factor that the company does not control. And if the economy goes through a recession, will it only impact you or will it only impact your company? No, it will impact your competitors as well. So it will impact the overall industry, right? So not only so, an external environmental factor is a factor that affects you as well as your competitors, and it is not in anyone's control, specifically not in your control, right? So those are external environmental factors. Let's think about another example like politics. So let's say that in the next election, a Republican presidential candidate wins. So in that case, will it mean like certain policies will change? I would imagine it would. Similarly, if a Democratic presidential nominee won the presidential election, then again the policies will change. Now, as a company, are those policies and the politicians that make those policies in your control? No, they are not in your control. It is an external factor, right? But the policies and the decisions that they make will have an impact on the company. It could be a positive impact or it could be a negative impact. But it is an impact that will be felt by the industry, it will be felt by you, it will be felt by your competitors, and you cannot control that external environmental factor, right? So external environmental factors, factors that you cannot control, and factors that will affect the overall industry. Whereas internal environmental factors are factors that you can control, that factors that are under your control. So let's say that you increase your production capacity, right? So if you are able to increase your production capacity, then it is an internal factor because you control your production capacity. Nobody else does, right? So it is something that is internal to you. Let's say you've got a really, really great marketing department. So since having a great marketing department is internal to your company and something that your company controls, it is a internal factor. Thinking about you personally, right? So what could be my strength, right? The degrees that I hold, the educational degrees that I hold, the certifications that I have, right? My English speaking skills are all internal factors to me, right? Some of them might be positive, some of them might be negative, but we'll talk about that later. So the way to distinguish an internal factor from an external factor is whether or not it is under your control and whether or not it impacts you only or it impacts all the industry, including your competitors. Now, once you've figured out whether or not a factor is internal or external, the next thing you need to figure out is whether or not the factor is positive or negative, which is basically whether the factor positively affects you or the factor negatively affects you. So when we talked about external environmental factor, let's say, which was the economy, right? So the economy goes down. If the economy goes down into a recession, is it a positive thing for you or a negative thing for you? That's another differentiation you have to make. In some cases, the economy going down might be a positive thing for certain companies, whereas for most companies, the economy going down might be a negative thing. So let's take an example like if you are a high end retailer or if you sell luxury goods and products, in that case, the economy going down is most likely going to be a negative factor that affects you. It is out of your control, so it's an external factor that is negative. But if you are a dollar store and you sell products for really, really cheap, what would the economy going into recession mean to you? The economy goes down, it's an external factor to the company. When consumers have less money to spend, they spend money buying cheaper goods, right? So if you're a dollar store, then more consumers will visit the dollar store than when the economy was really, really good. So in that case, the economy going down is a positive factor for the company, right? So the first thing you need to figure out whether or not something is internal or external, and then The second thing you need to figure out is whether it's positive or negative. Now, some internal factors might also be positive or negative. And as I explained earlier, my English speaking skill is an internal factor, and I would consider it to be so my English speaking skill is an internal factor to me, and now I will let you decide whether or not it's a positive thing or a negative thing. My English speaking skills, are they good or are they bad? Right? So if you decide that my English speaking skill is not good enough, then it's a weakness. If you decide my English speaking skill is good enough, then it's a positive, right? So you need to decide whether it's an internal and external factor, and you need to decide whether or not it's a positive or negative factor. So let's take a look at how we correctly classify. Okay, so if it's a positive factor and it's internal to you, then it's a strength, right? If you consider my English speaking skill is good enough, then that would be a strength because it's a positive thing and then it's internal factor to me. Weaknesses, it's an internal factor that is negative. So if you consider my English speaking is not good enough, then in that case, it's an internal factor and it's a negative, so it's a weakness. What is an opportunity? It's an external factor that is positive, right? So if the economy is going up, which is a positive thing that the company does not control, so it's an external factor. So it's an external factor that is positive, so it's an opportunity. But if the economy is going through a recession, then it's a negative external factor, and that is why it is a threat. If a politician comes along that, like, let's for a moment imagine you are a cigarette company, right? So you're a cigarette company, and then there might be a certain political leader who is very, very opposed to cigarette smoking. So if that political leader gets into power, then it's an external environmental factor that is negative to you, so it will be a threat for you, right? But if you are, let's say, a non-profit organization that wants people to quit smoking, right, then the same political leader going into power will be an external environmental factor for the non-profit organization, and it will be a positive thing for the non-profit organization, and it will be an opportunity for the non-profit organization, right? So hopefully by looking at this, you can correctly classify the strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And I want you to do this for yourself as well, as I've already said. So let's take a little bit of a deep dive into, again, the SWOT analysis. So whenever we're talking about internal factors, these are a few of the things that you can look at in terms of creating a marketing plan for a particular company. And these are internal factors. So as we saw from the previous slide, the internal factors can either be a strength or a weakness, right? So these are the internal factors. Production costs are generally under your control, so they are internal factor. You control the quality, the marketing department, and the skills that it possesses, the engineering and technological skills that you possess, right? The infrastructure in terms of manufacturing facilities, your distribution capabilities are also factors that are internal to you. If you are a big company and can get loans cheaply, or you can get generate equity through the stock market because you are a very, very well-known company, then that's also going to be a positive thing. The brand image that you have, like consumers think that you are a really, really good and high quality brand, then it would also be a internal factor. So it could be a strength or a weakness depending upon whether or not it's a positive or negative. So if you produce high quality products when the consumers are also demanding high quality product, then that's a positive thing and should be a strength. But if you are creating low quality products when the consumers are demanding high quality products, then it's going to be a weakness. But at the same time, if you are creating low quality products and the consumers actually do not care about quality at all, then creating low quality product could be a strength for you as well, right? So it would be a positive thing. So you have to keep those things in mind whenever you are creating your SWOT analysis and trying to classify your strengths or weaknesses. So internal factors will generally be strengths or weaknesses depending upon whether or not the factor is positive or negative. Now let's take a look at the opportunities and threats, right? So as I said, opportunities and threats are external environmental factor that might be positive or negative. So if the external environmental factor is positive, then it is going to be an opportunity. If the external environmental factor is a negative, then in that case it's going to be a threat. So external environmental factor are factors that are out of your control, right? And those are generally trends in markets that you need to keep in mind as well. So when you are looking at figuring out the external environmental factor, one really good way to start looking at external environmental factor is to do the PESTELC analysis, which is also very widely known in the business world as the PESTEL analysis, right? So PESTEL-C analysis: political, economical, social, technological, environmental, legal, and competitive factors. So these are all external environmental factors that the company generally does not control but might have a positive or negative impact upon your company, right? So let's say, let's just take a brief example for each of those factors and try to figure out whether or not it will be a positive or negative and try to classify it, right? So the political changes that might be happening. So if a Democrat comes to so if the Democrat gain control of the government, then there will be certain policies that they will be enacting. Versus if a Republican party takes control of the government, then there will be certain policies that they will be enacting. Those policies might have a positive impact on certain industries, in which case for the participants of that industries or the companies of that industries, it would be a positive factor, so it would be an opportunity. Versus for some other companies, it might be a negative factor and would be a threat. So let's just take a look at an example of President Trump putting in tariffs on foreign exports within the United States, right? So he put a 25% tariff on washing machines that were not manufactured in the United States. So in that case, it's an external environmental factor for all the companies that are selling washing machines in the United States. But if you are a manufacturer that was manufacturing within the United States or in a country that is not included in that tariff, then in that case, that tariff is a positive external environmental factor. And why is it positive? Because you will not have to raise your prices, or you will it or because the cost for you in terms of selling the washing machine does not change, but the cost for your competitors who were not manufacturing their products in the approved countries will be impacted negatively. So your competitors' prices will have to go up, but at the same time your prices does not need to go up, which means your product now will be competitive compared to your competitors' products, right? So the external environmental factor of increased tariff, which is a political factor, has a positive impact on you, so it's an opportunity for you. But if your competitor is also doing a SWOT analysis, in that case, for the competitor, this is an external environmental factor that is negative, and that is why it is going to be a threat, right? One way to classify whether it's a positive or a negative, and it's an external factor. And the economical factor, I already gave you examples of recession versus economic expansion, right? So if the economy is going well, then in that case, if you are a high-end luxury retail manufacturer, so if the economy is taking off and you are a luxury product manufacturer, it's a positive thing for you, right? But for some companies that might be selling low quality product at a lower price, it might not be a positive thing that more people have more money to spend. So it might be a negative factor for them. So economic expansion might be a positive factor for some company and an opportunity. It might be a negative factor for some other company and a threat. So there is also this story that says that one of the ways you can know how the country is going into recession is you start looking at McDonald's and their offerings of the dollar menu, right? So when McDonald's starts offering more items in their dollar menu, means that the economy is going through a recession. So McDonald's, Walmart, and other low price retailers generally tend to do well when the economy goes down, because more people have less money to spend and they want to spend it, and they generally don't care about quality as much as they would have if they had more money, right? So the economic downturn might be positive for some companies, whereas it might be a negative for some companies. If it's a negative, it's a threat. If it's a positive, it's an opportunity. Now let's take a look at some social factors. Now social factors are also very important, and I would say that it is one of the most important factors that affects a company's ability to do business, and in terms of its effect on how the company should create its marketing plan. So social changes might be changes in demographics, it might be changes in the consumer's lifestyle, right? So there might be changes that are going on that could have a positive impact on a certain industry versus a negative impact. So in terms of social trends, let's look at some demographic trends that might have an impact, right? So the demographic trends are factors that are external to the company. The company does not control the demographic factor change that is happening. Like people are getting old, your company or my company cannot control the fact that people are getting old. But we see that in terms of demographics, there are a few generations that are very, very relevant, right? So millennials is a generation that is the largest generational cohort right now. Baby boomers are the generation that is older, right? So if you think about the healthcare industry, the baby boomer generation getting old is a positive factor. It's an external environmental factor for the healthcare industry, but at the same time, the more people get old, the more they will require healthcare, right? So nursing homes, hospitals will have more business because more people are getting old and they will require more medical attentions, which would mean that, in an ironic sort of way, positive thing for those particular industries, right? So social changes that are happening is going to have a positive or negative impact. Now think about the consumers, the younger generations being very, very tech savvy, right? So if you look at the stock market, you will see that tech companies are doing really, really, really well. Why is that? Because the consumers are very, very tech savvy, and new technologies that emerge in the market that satisfies the needs and wants of these younger tech savvy generations will have a better opportunity for success, right? So a tech savvy generation might be a positive thing for some companies, but for some companies who are doing things still the old way, a tech savvy newer generation might be a negative thing, right? So it might be a threat. So if you are a really, really good social media marketing company, consumers using social media is a positive thing for you and an external factor, so an opportunity. But if you are a company that does not know how to do social media, then the consumers going into social media is a negative factor for you and so a threat. Similarly, technological factors are also external environmental factors, because we know that the technology keeps on evolving rapidly, right? So the rapid evolving the rapid advancement of technology might affect certain companies positively, it might affect certain companies negatively. So we all know, like Nokia was the number one cell phone manufacturer in the world. So the technological innovation from flip phones to smartphone was a negative thing that happened in the external environmental factor that made Nokia almost irrelevant, right? So while that transition was a positive thing for many companies, it was also a negative thing for many companies. So for the companies that it impacted negatively, it is a threat. For the companies that it impacted positively, it's a opportunity. Environmental factors are also factors that might positively or negatively impact certain companies. Like we all know, and I hope you would agree, that there is a climate change happening in the world right now, right? So the climate change happening in the world, the reserves of oil going down, as I've heard many, many times before, right, would be a positive or negative factor. So if the environmental changes that are happening around the world is a positive factor, then it would be an opportunity. I don't see how it would be a positive factor. But if it is a negative factor, then it is going to be a threat. So In terms of legal factors, the laws that are already placed in the marketplace that affect you, so the laws of specific countries will also impact how the company is able to do business, right? So the advertising laws in the United States might be different than the advertising laws in many other countries, but you have to abide by those laws everywhere. The pricing laws, how much you can price a particular product, might also be fixed in certain countries, right? So there are laws associated with a lot of different aspects of business that might positively or negatively impact your company. If it impacts your company positively, it's going to be an opportunity. If it's impacted negatively, it's going to be a threat. Now, competitive factors are again very, very important when it comes to external environmental factors. Now, competitors are there in almost every industry, right? So if the competitors being there and what the competitors are doing is positive for you, then it's an opportunity, or what they are not doing is an opportunity, right? Versus if what the competitors are doing is bad for you, then it is going to be a threat, right? So if you have competitors that are incompetent, then that's an external environmental factor, but it's a positive factor for you, so that's an opportunity for you. Also, let's say the number of competitors. So you are operating in an industry where there are only two other competitors, versus if you are operating in an industry where there are seven other competitors. In that case, the competitive pressure could either be a positive thing or a negative thing. So low number of competitors might be a positive thing and would be an opportunity. A high number of competitors might be a threat. A high number of competitors might be a negative thing and then therefore consequently a threat, right? So this way you can understand what the external environmental factor is and how it positively or negatively impacts your business, and you can correctly classify external environmentals that external environmental factors that are positive as opportunities and external environmental factors that are negative as threats. So this is a summary of what we just discussed right now, right? So internal factors, company specific, the factors that are specific to you. If it's positive, it's a strength. If it's negative, it's a weakness. External environmental factors are factors that you cannot control, and it impacts you as well as it impacts your competitors in the industry. Now, if it impacts you positively, then it's an opportunity. If it impacts you negatively, then it's a threat, right? So I hope by using these uh, so I hope that you've understood how to correctly classify opportunities, threats, strengths, and weaknesses.
So, Rachel's boss smoking is an external environmental factor that has an impact on Rachel's plan of impressing her boss. Now, whether that's a positive or negative factor will determine whether it's an opportunity for Rachel or a threat. Now, here we see that Rachel is not able to smoke, and that is an internal factor for Rachel, right? So, in this situation, not being able to smoke, is it positive or negative? If it's a positive thing that helps her achieve her goals, then it would be her strength. If it's a negative thing that hinders her from achieving her goal, then it would be a weakness. So in this situation, we can see that her inability to smoke is a weakness, and her boss smoking, an external environmental factor, is consequently a threat. So here we can see that Rachel has a weakness, and what she is doing is that since that weakness is stopping her from achieving the goal, she is trying to convert that weakness into her strength. Now, if she were able to smoke, then that would be a strength, and the external environmental factor that her boss is a smoker would turn from a threat to an opportunity because she was able to turn her weakness into a strength, right? So this is something that we will talk later about in this video as well, when you are creating a plan, right? So if you are faced with a situation where you have a weakness, you should try to convert your weakness into a strength. If it is possible, then you should also try to convert your threats into your opportunities by changing something about yourself or your company. So here we see that the external environmental factor is not in your control, right? So no matter what Rachel does, the external environmental factor will do what it will do. So the option for you is to try to make the best out of the situation. If it's a positive, like it was for Rachel's competitor, there's not much you need to do. But if it's a threat, then you try to manage the risks and the threat as much as you can, as Rachel did by trying to change her weakness into her strength. But as we can see from from this video again, sometimes things are just out of your control and there's nothing you can do. But to understand that there is nothing you can do is also a part of a plan.
An important thing that we should always remember is the SWOT analysis is an important part of any planning, right? So as I said, it could be a personal planning or companies devising certain marketing or their business plan, they will all do SWOT analysis. So this video has taught you how to classify strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats correctly, right? So now let's briefly start talking about like how you can use SWOT analysis to do strategy planning, right? How you can plan ahead by using SWOT analysis. Now you looked at the strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. So you've identified the different factors that are associated with the strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. So for an example purpose, let's say that you identified a number of strengths, you identified a number of weakness, you identified a number of opportunities, and then you identified a number of threats, right? So here you can see S1, S2, and S3, three strengths, two weaknesses, two opportunities, and two threats you identified. So how do you take advantage of how do you take advantage of your understanding of your strengths, weakness, and opportunities and threats? Is that you try to match your strength with your opportunities, right? Let's say you are a very technologically innovative company, and which is an internal strength, and then there is a market opportunity in that consumers are demanding very technologically sophisticated products nowadays. In that case, there is a good match between your strength and the opportunity in the marketplace. Let's say another example, you are a really good company that does social media really well. And then there is a market opportunity in the sense that there is a social opportunity in the marketplace that the consumers are very social media savvy. So you can match your strength and opportunities by creating a lot of social media contents. Now creating a lot of social media contents is going to be your strategy that you have created after matching your strengths and your opportunities. Now if your strengths and your opportunities match really well, that's a really good thing, and you can easily start to create strategies that you can work towards, right? Another example, let's say that you are a very big uh, elect- electric vehicle manufacturer, which is a internal strength. And now the the external opportunity, let's say that consumers are getting very environmentally conscious, which means they are demanding a lot of electric vehicles. They are moving away from fossil fuels. They are moving away from fossil fuels related cars, right? So in this case, your strength and the opportunity are a perfect match. So you can start producing or increase your production of electric vehicles, which will satisfy the newly created demand, which is external to your company. So there is a match between the strength and your opportunities. So let's take a look at a few other examples of how you can create different strategies depending upon whether something is your strength, weakness, opportunities, or threat. Right, so let's say you are the number one electric car manufacturer, and then an external environmental factor that is going to affect you is that all the competitors or majority of your competitors are now entering the market as well. So your strength is you are the number one electric car manufacturer. The threat is a lot of your competitors are now entering your market. So what should you do? Maybe you should think about capturing as much market share as possible right now before your competitors start taking market share away from you or before they actually enter the market, right? So you have your strategy might be to be very aggressive right now before your competitors get in. So here you are looking at your strength, you're looking at the market threat, and you are devising strategy appropriately. Now let's say that you have a weakness, and your weakness is that your production capacity. As we all know, like production capacity is an internal factor, and changing production capacity is a very difficult thing to do because it requires establishing manufacturing plants, getting raw materials, and all of those things that are associated with it. So let's say your weakness is that you don't have well established manufacturing capabilities, and then you can only produce 1 million cars per year while the demand is 10 millions. So here you have a weakness. You are not able to meet the demand that exists out there. The opportunity in this case is the 10 million demand, right? So your capability of 1 million production is your weakness, and the opportunity is the demand of 10 million. So what should you do? Maybe you should start to create more production capabilities, right? So you need to ramp up your production capabilities so that you can satisfy the needs and wants of the 9 million extra consumers that exists out there. For this, you will need to change your weakness. So you will need to work on your weakness so that your weakness no longer remains a weakness, right? So you try to convert your weaknesses into your strength. In this way, you can create a strategic plan that takes advantage of an opportunity and gets rid of your weakness. Now let's say you have another weakness. So let's say you don't have a very strong brand recognition when it comes to the SUV segment, or that in the SUV segment there are your competitors who have very strong and loyal brand following. So that is your weakness, right? So your weakness is you are not well known when it comes to the SUV category. So that's your weakness. What is your threat? Or your possible threat could be like your competitors are now entering the SUV electric vehicle market, and they have stronger brand recognition than you do in that particular segment, right? So big companies are entering the electric SUV market. You are not very well known when it comes to the SUV market. You might be very well known in the electric market, but you are not very well known when it comes to the SUV market, right? So here you have a weakness, and then you have a competitive threat. So what should your strategy be? Maybe one strategy that you could devise is that you don't enter the SUV market at all, and you just decide to focus on the sedan category in which you have very brand loyal followings and you are doing really well, right? So maybe that could be a strategy that you can think about. Or you can start thinking about, again, converting your weaknesses, right? So your weakness is you don't have a strong brand recognition when it comes to the SUV category. Now what you can do is you can try to increase your brand recognition in the SUV category. So the SWOT analysis is very useful when it comes to creating strategies. Hopefully through this video you understood how to classify the different factors correctly in terms of the strengths, weakness, opportunities and threats. And I also hope that you were able to understand how you can use the SWOT analysis and the different factors associated with this analysis to create different strategies for the direction of your company in the future. All of this is going to have a very big impact on your overall marketing plan. What you do after creating your situation analysis, the target market you are going to go after, the marketing mix that you are going to create is all dependent upon a well thought out and well worked SWOT analysis. So I hope now you are able to do it well. Thank you once again for listening to this video. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, feedbacks, please do not hesitate to let me know. If there is any topic that you want me to cover as well that I have not covered, please let me know as well. Thank you so much. Take care.